Hi everyone, Arabel here with Chic Innovator. I'd like to introduce you to our next guest, Marie P. Anderson. Marie is a mother agent and an icon in the Chicago fashion industry and beyond. From discovering supermodel Cindy Crawford to starting her own model agency, Marie has been all over the globe, connecting with fashion's biggest houses on projects that most people in the industry only dream of. She's been featured in Rolling Stone magazine, Vice, and 60 Minutes, and is the successful author of 2 books, The Complete Guide to Becoming a Professional Model and The Complete Guide for Men and Women, both of which have been published internationally. But Marie P. Anderson has also survived early childhood trauma and has been 21 years clean and sober. She has become a champion for so many in the fashion industry, male and female. So take a listen as we unbox Marie's key ingredients to her formula for success, as well as what she looks for when booking successful high fashion models. All of this and more on this exciting episode of Chic Innovator.
So I went from being a booker to the director to the vice president within a 7-year period.
Which is unheard of in the industry. People that don't know, it's unheard of in the industry.
I had discovered the teenager Cindy Crawford inside of a makeup artist book.
You're 20 years old at the time.
Well, when I started with Stan, by the time I discovered Cindy, I was 24.
24. I mean, wow.
You're watching Chic Innovator. Stay tuned for fascinating topics, fascinating people that have style and are innovative. You're watching Chic Innovator. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It's free.
Please introduce yourself to our audience, and I'm so excited to have you here with us on Chic Innovator.
Well, I'm excited to be here as well. The brief story is my name is Marie P. Anderson. I'm a model industry expert with 40 years of experience, primarily based out of Chicago. I'm also a personal safety advocate and the founder of Boss Babe Models.
I love that. Always have loved the name Boss Babe Models. I thought that was such a great
right?
Name. Yes. Tell me on the safety aspect really quick, what does that mean? What is
okay,
that?
Excellent. Thank you. So I am a 2nd degree black belt in Shidokan Karate.
Okay.
Out of Chicago Fitness Center. And when I started my training 25 years ago, I did it because I was tired of feeling like a victim because I had been victimized by violent trauma, sexual trauma. So I started training there so I would be feeling less of an advocate. And the more I trained, the more empowered I was, the more I wanted to share it with my models or anybody that would come and take a class there.
Yes, no, I think that's so important. I'm actually a 1st degree black belt in Taekwondo, almost 2nd, and I did it with my daughter, kind of for the same reasons that I wanted for her to feel empowered. And there was a situation where it ended up being very helpful to her. I will just say that. She was, not in danger, but she could have been if she hadn't had that expertise and background. It also, as you know, gives you so much confidence that's really more than anything, and it helps you avoid situations because
Absolutely.
You're aware, right?
Being proactive.
Yes, being proactive. So, oh my goodness, I love that. So we have something kind of aligned, and I know we think a lot the same. Let me ask you quickly, because I know you're in Florida now and you came from Florida. And so how did you decide that you wanted to get into this industry? I think it's a wonderful, beautiful industry, right? But it's got its complications as well. But how did you decide as a young a young person, you were very young when you got into it, to get into modeling?
Well, my mother had been a model before she met my father. And she was in New York. It wasn't like she was some big successful model. She was just more of a freelance model decades ago. And so when we were living here in Florida, as I was a little child, my father was a rocket scientist at NASA during the
Oh,
Apollo moon program.
okay.
So as a result, my mother made her own life. And what she was focusing on was being a community activist. And by doing so, she was doing all sorts of fundraisers. And how did she raise the funds? By doing fashion shows.
Which is, as you and I were just talking, we're still
Yes.
doing a lot of that here, even with the Runway Latinx event that I do. We raise money for Pivoting in Heels. That's it's a great way, right? Because fashion shows can be very attractive to people, and people feel at ease. And if they know it's for a cause, it's even more wonderful. So then did you start modeling there?
Yeah. So I was one of the kids
Okay.
doing runway, and we were doing shop local in the early 60s before
Yeah.
it was like a thing
Yeah.
like it is now.
Yeah.
So my mom was just using like local boutiques. It wasn't like any big designers like back then, Oscar de la Renta. It was nothing like that. It was just local stuff. She did very well. And that kind of, I got bit by the bug. And so she eventually taught me how to sew, how to knit, how to crochet. I was making my own Barbie doll clothes. I was doing little runway fashion shows with Barbie and all of her friends in my bedroom. Like the fashion business was just a glorious sanctuary for me as a troubled kid.
Yeah, no, I loved fashion early on too. That's another story with my dad and everything. But I used to make clothes for my Barbie too. I actually went into design. People don't know this, but I took a year and a half into design and decided, no, I think I'm going to go to law school. I think I could make more money this way. And my life has taken on a whole different route. But so fashion was in your life early on. And it sounds like your mom was quite a pioneer too, right? She sounds very innovative, and a lot of the things that you're seeing now, she was doing back then as well. So great foundation for you.
I've had a very unique upbringing. My mother was, and back in the day, they really weren't talking about this, but she was a fully functional schizophrenic. And
Okay.
so
Okay.
she balanced that mental health by herself, meaning that the doctors really weren't helping her. They were experimenting on drugs, but at the same time, she was fully functioning, doing all this community activism and raising all this money for whatever cause that she had. She would become the president of the Brevard County Diabetes Association.
Oh,
So
wow.
diabetes, the elderly, African Americans, like she was quite diverse, and her love that just spilled out everywhere.
Just using that energy. That's incredible. And that's fantastic because she was obviously very intelligent to be able to know how to funnel that energy in the correct way. Tell me, so you come to Chicago, you do modeling. Tell me about how you decided to start a modeling agency.
Well, that's a lot to unpack. I'm not complaining,
Yeah.
but I'll try to get to the point very quickly.
Okay.
So let's just go back to my fashion design, and then we can jump forward because it's relevant.
Okay.
So as I was growing up, I wanted to become a fashion designer. That was it. I was making, I progressed out of Barbie, and I was making my own clothes.
I did too.
Making my girlfriend's clothes. Like I was obsessed with becoming a fashion designer. So, and I was married as a 16-year-old, and I didn't have any money, still going to high school. So I started applying to all these colleges for a scholarship, and everybody was saying no. And then finally, one school out of Atlanta, can't remember the name of it, but they offered me a scholarship. And I ran in to tell my sewing home ec teacher that I finally got a scholarship. I was going to become a fashion designer. And she looked at me holding the letter. She looked at me. She goes, Marie, you'll never be a fashion designer. You don't have any talent.
She was putting you in a box.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was it.
Yeah.
I believed in her more than I believed in myself.
Yeah.
So that was the end of my fashion designer career. So when I moved to Chicago, I got a job at an employment agency, and the owner, Perry Orr, kept promoting me from receptionist to office manager to personal assistant. And then, hopefully you'll remember this photographer, Stan Malinowski. He was one of the biggest fashion photographers back in the day. It was him and Victor Skrybnewski.
Yes,
And
those
so
names are
right?
marked in history. Yes, yes.
So I became a studio manager to Stan Malinowski at the age of 20.
Wow. Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And so I worked for Stan for 3 years. And one day he came to me and he said, Marie, I think you should become a model agent because you're spending way too much time with the models during castings, and I'm not paying you to teach them how to model.
And you were already jumping in and teaching them how to model. Oh my goodness.
Because it's about education, you
Yes.
know?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So
yes.
once you've got it, you want to share it.
Yes.
So I called up Jane Stewart, who owned a little tiny agency called Stewart Talent, and told her I wanted to work for her as a booker.
Little then.
Excuse me?
It was little then.
This is what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
talking about another icon in Chicago,
Yes.
Jane Stewart.
Yes.
So I started working for her, and within 6 months of working with the little tiny 800 square foot office at 70 West Hubbard in Chicago, I had discovered the teenager Cindy Crawford inside of a makeup artist book.
Oh.
And then about 6 months later, Jane Stewart would
So hold on Cindy Crawford. So you're looking through a makeup book, or what? How did
makeup artist George Statner was there to be considered as a talent that I would book, like he was looking to get signed.
Yes.
And I saw this one photograph, and I'll send it to you guys.
Okay.
This one photograph, and I forgot George was even in the room. I felt so badly. I was like so mesmerized by this beauty that I was looking at. And I said, oh my gosh, who is this? And he said, oh, she's just a kid in high school. She's been rejected by the agencies in Chicago because of her beauty mark and her dark circles underneath her eyes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, the beauty mark, that's going to separate her from all the other models. And the dark circles, that's lighting.
Yeah, exactly.
So it was George and the photographer, Scott Weimer.
Let me just tell our audience, dark circles, it's lighting, people. No, just kidding.
Yes.
It's lighting. No, wow. So then you had to have been mesmerized looking and seeing her. And so your gut immediately told you this is something special.
Well, keep in mind, I had been working for Stan Malinowski for 3 years. It wasn't a big jump, right? We were working in Rome with Valentino and Lancetti and booking all the Italian campaigns. And we were working with Dalma, Beverly Johnson, Iman. Like, my eye was trained to exotic beauty.
Yes. So and you're at the time, Marie, you're 20 years old at the time.
Well, when I started with Stan, by the time I discovered Cindy, I was 24.
24. I mean, wow. Yes. Still a babe in the woods, but definitely with a keen eye by then. That's incredible. Yeah.
Well, I attribute that to Stan. And another little tidbit about work, when I worked for Stan, hopefully you're old enough to remember her, but one of the models that Stan liked to book was Gia.
Okay.
So Cindy, when I saw Cindy's face, I had already been editing Gia's images for Vogue magazine. So when I saw Cindy, I was like, God, she looks kind of like a baby Gia. And Gia was still modeling at this time. Eventually she would quit, and God bless her soul, she would die. But the point is that I have to attribute the eye that I learned working for Stan to then when I saw Cindy, it wasn't a leap. I mean, she was beautiful. I didn't care. She didn't look like the traditional Chicago models. I wanted her.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And that's something I want our audience, because we have an array. You know, we have around from 24 to like 60, that's kind of the average age of our audience. We're kind of widespread. And it's a lot of people that are very interested in style and fashion and art. And what you're saying is that some of it is innate, but some of it you can train. And that's what I try to tell people as well, that you can train. I know we have, for example, a lot of interns that we pay for and, you know, try to get involved in different industries, especially in the fashion industry. And you can train the eye, you know, you can train it, and then it becomes second nature, and then it just kind of comes from your gut, and then you just know. I love that. That's, I think, very important for people to know that and understand that is a possibility that's out there. But obviously you were doing this consistently, and you were with the top at the time, you know?
Yes.
So, and you're traveling, sounds like, all over the world.
Yes.
Did you ever stop at that time and go, wow, like, you know, pinch me a little bit? You know, did you have any pinch me moments during that period? Yeah, I bet.
It was the first time I was on set in Rome with the Valentino, the human Valentino.
Wow.
And it was like 1980. And we were shooting bridal gowns. And it was Dalma, Apollonia, and Beverly Johnson. And again, Valentino bridal gowns. Speechless.
Yes.
They were so magnificent. And these three women were on set with these beautiful, huge gowns. And they were like angels. And it was so weird. Like the way they moved together was in synchronicity with each other, and then with Stan, the photographer, simultaneously. So yes, I stood there just going, oh my gosh, this is everything that I wanted, but I wanted to be the designer, not the studio manager.
No, I know the feeling. Trust me, I know the feeling. Tell me, because at that age or at any age, if there were three things from your work ethic that you believe or that you can think of helped you get to that point, but also stay there, because you're young, right? And a lot of people at that time are doing all kinds of other things. But could you share with us maybe three key things about your work ethic that kept you in there and that obviously got you these opportunities?
Well, yes, I can. So three would be, starting with my father's career. What I witnessed was putting men on the moon, or humans on the moon, regardless of gender. With the right team in place, anything is possible.
Okay.
So it's all about teamwork, effort, working towards a common mission, a common cause. Mm-hmm. Two, no matter how bad things get, with my mom, she taught me the lesson: when you've lost your sense of humor, that's when you've lost everything.
Sense of humor.
And third, my first boss in Chicago, Perry Orr, at the employment agency, he taught me to always, this is going to sound simple and silly, but it's so effective, and I use it to this day. I was even taking notes while you were talking. He taught me as a 18-year-old, newly arrived in Chicago, always write everything down, commit nothing to memory.
Okay. Yeah.
Sounds simple.
Yeah.
But it's amazing how many people I'll be interviewing or giving advice to, and they're going, and then they'll follow up saying, can you just tell me what you said when you were talking to me? I'm like, no. You could have written it down.
You know, I have a thing with our staff, with our team, because I have a very good team, and very grateful to them. But a lot of times, and I won't mention names here, but they have a tendency to just sometimes use the cell phone, right? And not even, and kind of forget to put things down. And it makes such a difference. For me, it's a mental thing. And it is, even if you're used to digital, but there's a connection between writing and going right to the brain. And you don't have to write the whole thing down. I'm in a lot of meetings. As you know, I serve on several boards and things like that. And just writing one even word that is an association to what has just been said, then I go back to that and it clicks my brain. You know, I have this whole thing about maximizing the use of your physical brain and spiritual, and writing is such a, and I mean physically writing, even if it's a word. So I'm with you. So thank you for that. That's a big deal that a lot of people have lost, and they don't realize the connection between the brain and the writing. Again, even if it's one, for me, it's one word. Sometimes when I went to law school, I used to have to write, like, you know, everybody's on, but for me to have to write, and then I'd remember a case, or I'd remember when I'd look at it, right? But no, thank you for that. That's really key. That's such a big deal. Yeah, and you're still the teamwork, I think, is, you know, also very, very important. All of it is key. Thank you for that. So then tell us about, you know, starting your agency.
Okay, so working for Jane, about 6 months later, after discovering Cindy, Jane merged with John Casablancas in New York, and we became Elite Chicago.
Yes.
And so I went from being a booker to the director to the vice president within a 7-year period.
Which is unheard of in the industry. People that don't know, it's unheard of in the industry. Yes.
And then before I left, I wrote my first book on how to become a model that was published worldwide. And who was on the cover? Cindy. And she said she would be proud to be on the cover to thank me for what I had done for her career. And I don't want to sound nasty, but this is the impetus. I would quit the agency business in 1989 because I had overheard two of the most powerful men in the network of Elite defending themselves for sleeping with 13 and 14-year-old girls.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, no.
And I was like, this is disgusting. Mm-hmm. I had heard confidential disclosures from some of my models coming back from Europe, and I believed them. But they also swore me to secrecy, so there's nothing I could do once I had that information. I just knew to start changing where I placed my models so that I wasn't putting them into harm's way. But after I heard those two men saying that, I swore off the agency business. And in 1990, I opened up a little scouting company, essentially what I'm doing now, a little scouting company called Model Futures. And I had that for 2 years. And then I met Mary Boncher, who had her commercial agency called Mary Boncher Model and Talent Management. And she offered me a partnership.
And that was still in Chicago? You were still in Chicago? Yeah. Okay.
And so, like adding water to a chia pet, we went from her over at Presidential Towers. She had a 2-bedroom apartment that her office was in. And then we moved over to 1017 West Washington. And the only thing over there was Oprah. And Wishbone restaurant was downstairs. Like, we couldn't even get cabs over there.
There was nothing over there. Oh my God. People who are new to Chicago would be shocked, right? To see, or those who are too young to remember what that was like. But it was just 15 years ago. There was nothing there. So you were in that area early on, when it wasn't too safe either. It wasn't.
No, that's why the cab drivers would not. This is before Uber.
Yeah.
This is before social media, like before smartphones.
Okay. Oh, wow. Yeah.
It was 1992. It was such a different world.
Yeah.
But so it was like adding water to a chia pet. Aria Model and Talent Management became super successful very quickly. Mary handled the money management. I was the ambassador, the face to the agency. And we would I'd write my second book on how to become a model that was published worldwide. We then purchased Suzanne's A Plus agency and merged them over to us. And then around 2000, we took on a venture capitalist, David Kronfeld, and he wanted to create a global network. And not too long after that, John Kaplan, who was the then brand new CEO of Ford New York, kept calling me, asking me to sell Aria to Ford.
Oh.
And I didn't want to, but both of my partners convinced me finally. And so we sold to Ford New York around 2003.
Oh, okay. Okay. And Ford here went through a lot of changes as well, as we both know. But so a couple of things. And I'm sorry, what was going on back there. Unfortunately, back in the 80s that you mentioned with some of those men and some of the things, unfortunately, we still see some of that out there, and hopefully try to protect. I know I do, and try to give advice and as much as you can to young women and young men, right? Sure. To be careful, not only in this industry, but in so many different places, right? I mean, you try to do your best. But tell me, with regards to modeling, and share with us, because I think most people think modeling and they think runway, and there's different types of modeling, right? Mm-hmm. Different types of talent. But if you could maybe give our audience maybe 3 different types that you would look for, and then on each, maybe give us 1 or 2 things other than looks that maybe you look for when you're looking for talent. That would be great to give that insight.
Well, what I scout for is going to be different from some of the agencies. And to clarify, after I left being the director of Wilhelmina in Chicago in 2017, I was like, okay, I'm done with agency. I'm just going to focus on education, scouting, and empowerment. Okay. Education, scouting, and empowerment was my mission statement. So for me, I scout for fashion models. And to clarify, I left the agency business. I'm just a mother agent. I do not book. I place my models with agencies. And when those agencies book my models, they give me a commission on that income. Right. So it's very important. Most people still call me a booking agency. So it's important that people understand that a model agent doesn't necessarily mean you're an agent inside of a booking agency. Right. You can be, which can create confusion. Right. But I'm not one of those. So I scout for traditional fashion models. Ideally, for me, 16 and older, I need them deep into puberty. And their heads are a little more mature. Their bodies are a little more mature. They're starting to think more seriously about their future. And as age, for me, one of my favorite models that I manage is Masayo Koshiyama, who's 70. Okay. Yeah. So it's not about age for me. It's about beauty and what makes them unique. There's something about them. So their height is important because I work in the world of fashion. Yes. I also scout for something that I call a sparkly spirit. I can see it in their eyes. Yeah, and it's an energy. There's an energy. There's just something about them that you feel privileged to have been able to meet with them. Mm-hmm. And so with that, if they have the height, and it's not about measurements, because as we know in the world of curve now, you can be a size 6, you can be an 8, you can be a 10, you can be a 12. It doesn't matter anymore. So it's no more about
Thank you, J-Lo. No, just kidding. I have curves, so
yeah, that is a perfect example.
Yes, yes.
So that's what I scout for. I'm looking for somebody that fits what fashion is booking these days, and who I think I can make money with. Mm-hmm. And that's all about what kind of a performer are they? Mm-hmm. Now, it used to be back in the day that agents would do all the work. Essentially, I'm overgeneralizing, but agencies used to do all the work, and the models would go to the castings, and the agencies would book them, and then they would just do what was called catalog work. where all you had to do is stand in front of the camera and look pretty and move your body in catalog clothes like Sears, Montgomery Ward's, Marshall Field's. I'm really bringing up some old Chicago clients.
Yeah.
But the point is, in this era, it's all about performance, dance, movement, energy.
Yes.
Clients want a high octane energy level because there's a theory it's easier to tune somebody down. Meaning if they're really high energy, the photographer or the videographer, whoever they're working with, can say, okay, that was great, but can you bring it down to be a little more subtle?
Yeah.
That's easier than someone who comes in flat.
Yeah.
It's like, like, it's not their job to tell you what to do.
Yeah.
It's your job to know, especially now with this era, with social media and the internet, how much research they can do to find out what their responsibilities are.
Exactly. Yeah, there's so much out there. There's, you can watch
Limitless.
YouTube and get trained like that, right? A lot of them do.
Different types of models are booked from different types of agencies. Like in Chicago specifically, you have Ford models.
Yeah.
You've got One. You've got, oh my God, I'm blanking because of various markets, what's left in Chicago. So you've got Option One. Like there's a lot of, Select. There's a lot of very strong agencies that have fashion brands.
Mm-hmm.
Those aren't the agencies that will book what is considered lifestyle commercial print.
Mm-hmm.
And that could be anything and everything that is your neighbor next door, the guy down the street. It could be a child. It could be a grandparent. So lifestyle commercial print, those models sell products and services.
Mm-hmm.
A fashion model sells fashion and beauty products.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then you can even have what is considered a hand model. It's called body parts. Hand model, foot model, tummy model.
Yeah. I know. All the different parts. Yes. Yeah, that's
so
it.
To address social media, as much as I hate to say it, but I got to speak the truth, Instagram is 100% a decision maker on whether an agency is going to book you or a client is going to want to book you.
Yes.
Because now, what I was saying before, how the agents used to do all the work. Mm-hmm. Back then, we didn't have very many models. We had abundance of clients. It was the 80s. It was the 90s. A lot of money was flowing. And I'm not getting into politics. I'm just stating fact.
Yeah.
In this era, the models have got to do way more work through their social media than the agents do. Because the agents no longer have time. There's such a saturation of models, such a saturation of agencies, clients, all through Instagram, and very few. Oh, and now as a result of AI, there's not a lot of money being spent. And all you have to do is read a quick article from Business of Fashion and see what's happening. Like, it's just, there's not a lot of money being spent and there's not a lot of money being earned in the modeling business right now.
Right.
So it's very important that people understand that they are a freelance, self-employed contractor. And they have got to level up their game and to understand they're competing with millions of people around the world.
Yeah,
and
it's
Instagram
extremely competitive. Extremely.
Instagram is the primary platform. Yes, TikTok, but at the end of the day, it's really Instagram.
Yeah, I'm glad you're saying that. I know a lot of people go to TikTok, but TikTok seems to be more educational. And a lot of times they're almost kind of selling directly, right? And Instagram, the other part of it is you've got products and services that they themselves directly scout out. Just your person next door, like you were saying, and they'll find them and then contact them directly as well. So it's extremely competitive. You've got
a lot of agencies are suffering extremely badly as a result of so many people, so many clients just going directly to the models.
Yes. Yes.
sending them a DM. And I can't tell you how many models will say, oh, I'll work for free. They don't have to pay me.
No, you don't want to do that. Don't want to do that.
Sabotaging the industry.
Yeah. I even with our shows, I've always paid them. They, and a lot of the models, they want to help because it goes to a not-for-profit and everything, but we pay them and take care of them. And a lot of the models that work with us, some from agencies, predominantly, we do about half and half because I try to give new faces. And then I have some of the agencies actually come to our show, and then they've hired them off of our runway. So it's an opportunity for them. But I try to make sure that they get paid. I want them to learn that, you have to get paid. It's a business. And there's opportunities, and so to me, that's like a very important thing that I've always done. And I just have thought it wasn't just very, very important. And, we've created in a lot of instances a family because we stay in touch. I know last year I even did a little competition, and luckily 2 of the models got signed up with an agency I'm very excited about. They're doing well. We're staying in touch. And again, I know that if I needed something, they would do something for us because they know that I've been there for them for a while. And, but I think it's important that they understand that there should be some exchange. It's a business, right? And they should be running themselves as a business. And also creating the boundaries, the proper boundaries, because it creates respect for what they're doing. And I think that's
100%. Thank you.
Yeah. Well,
and thank you for paying the models.
Yeah.
Thank you for setting that precedent.
No, I say that because it's important and it sends out a message to others. I think the other thing when we do runway and people that work with us, photographers as well as models backstage, is that there's a respect that there's around the event and the work that everybody's doing. And again, the boundaries, creating those boundaries, for the models, even amongst themselves, to be respectful of each other. Right. So, and there have been some photographers that I have to say, so many of them are wonderful, but some that I have not allowed to come back into our show because they have crossed those boundaries. And so, I think all of that sends an important message, out to the industry. And it's surprising how word spreads in this industry. It spreads very quickly.
You've proven yourself to be an advocate, and you're not going to take any crap.
Yes,
and you're letting the models know that they have a safe space, not just in the podcast, but in the environment in which you circulate. Your circumference is making sure that everybody is safe.
Yeah, no, and it's important. And again, we've been doing this for about 20 years now, right? From the Latino Fashion Week to now and it's important to stand by, that. So tell me a little bit, because I know you've got, some key things that you adhere to that, are some key points in the way you approach life. In the work that you do as an advocate. I know that you're also a champion because for mental health and mental wellness, because for me, that's very important. That's something we promote a lot through Pivoting and Heals, through the not-for-profit that I mentioned. But tell us how you go about sending that message through the work that you do. Apart from the books, obviously, you're very clear there. But if you could share a little bit about that, because I think it's important for all of us to do that on a day-to-day. But how do you do it? How have you found the best way to do it?
Well, it started back in the 80s when I was working for Elite Chicago, and I was seeing how models were not advocated for. So I had just assumed, because I had been working with top models from the top agencies, with the top designers, there was nothing, ever weird on set. It was just such
top. Yeah.
So when I got into the local, and I don't mean to be disrespectful, it was just a different environment. Mm-hmm. And when I got into being an agent in Chicago, I started seeing that there were very few people that were advocating for models or understanding their needs as human beings. And because I was hearing people were confiding with me various stories of trauma. And again, confiding, I could not share it with anybody. I started to understand how fragile they were. And so whether it would be male or female, fashion or lifestyle commercial print from our Stewart talent department, whatever it was, I felt like I had to rally for everybody. And so that carried on to what I'm doing now. And it was always about integrity, faith, and courage. Those have been my 3 core values for decades. And just this year, it occurred to me, I forgot a very critical one, and that's nurture.
Oh,
so
nurture.
I just modified my core values to integrity, faith, courage, and nurture.
Nurture. Okay.
Because that's what I do all day long is nurture people.
Yeah. No,
so it started back then, but that has been the thread ever since. And with the mental health, going back to seeing the eating disorders, the drug and alcohol abuse, like all the problems that they were experiencing, I was experiencing as a human too. Mm-hmm. Just because I was an agent didn't make me immune to drug and alcoholism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Now I've got 21 years of sobriety, so I can openly talk about this. But back then,
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes. Congratulations.
So as people were divulging their mental health issues, it was just reminding me, just like my mother, nobody was advocating for her with her violent schizophrenia. So then I saw her suffering, mm-hmm. and I wanted to make sure that if anybody was suffering on a much less of an intense scale, but I wanted to advocate and try to do what I could to help them.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And tell us, has there been something, apart from all the work that you do, but consistent in your life that has helped you move forward, that has, for me, I try meditating every day. I do, certain exercises every day. I have some habits and patterns that I form to make my foundation stronger, because you can get wrapped up. You could be out every single night still, and again, it's Chicago. I'm not in Miami or in LA or whatever, but there's something every night there. You could be invited to parties all the time. And you kind of lose, I think, your center. And for me, having that center is really important for me. I have a lot of people that depend on what I do. And I do care deeply about the people that are around me and everything. But has there been something there that you've done, that you've created a habit, or something that you've done consistently, a mantra? I don't know what it is for you. I don't know if there is something, but.
Well, it'll sound cheesy, but I'm going to be honest.
No, please be honest.
Because I had such a troubled childhood, and being married as a 16-year-old and realizing I had married a man only a year older than me, and I would have to leave him and go homeless because of domestic violence. Like, I've had a lot of problems, and as a result, this is the cheesy part. I always knew God would take care of me.
Hey.
No matter how bad it was. My husband sticking a rifle to the side of my head, screaming that he was going to kill me if I left him. Like, I just kept knowing. I just had this blind belief, and I still do. Mm-hmm. So that has been the thread from a very young person. Now, that being said, becoming clean and sober 21 years ago, that opened up a whole different understanding of accountability, of just making sure that I'm doing the best that I can, not only for the people around me, but for myself. Mm-hmm. 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 And so jump forward now, you were talking about meditation. My new therapist finally got me into meditating. I tried for decades with my sobriety family, but now I can successfully meditate.
Oh, okay.
Wow. It's only 11 minutes.
Yes, that's fine.
And yes, there is a mantra.
Yes, okay.
And there's music, and I think Buddha thoughts.
Okay. But
yeah, fine. Like, that's really helping a lot. Actually, a year ago, I was suffering from laryngeal spasms. Like my throat would get so caught up, I couldn't even talk.
Okay.
And so I was on my 7th neurologist. Nobody could help me. And as soon as I started meditating, those spasms went away.
Yay! I love that.
It was all stress related.
I was going to say, what was causing your stress? But yes. Oh, that's so wonderful to hear. No, and I love hearing that faith. You know, at the end of the day, I think you can work really hard. You can do a million things, et cetera, but then you got to let it go and you have to trust. You have to have faith, right? I talk about that all the time. And for a lot of people, that's really hard because they want to control it all the way. And they're controlling it right into a wall, right? And so sometimes you got to work really hard, do everything you can, and then let it go and trust. You know, have that faith that it will work out well. So I think that's really important. You know, thank you for that. And loving yourself. People forget that. You know, we talk about loving the world and, you know, helping everybody, but you've got to love yourself first because then otherwise you don't have anything to give, you know, and
exactly. You're empty.
You're empty. And what you're giving out, unfortunately, then is so much less. And it sounds like you've been through so much and have really transformed so much. Congratulations. I mean,
thank you.
Apart from all the other work that you've done, that to me, you know, is really what you're leaving, you know, here as something to learn. So thank you so much for sharing that because that's a lot, you know, to go through in a lifetime. But I say, you know, that this is this life that we have is a great place to transform and transcend, you know, and we can do that with the work that we do and the life that we live, which it sounds like that's what you've been doing. So thank you. Thank you for all the work that you continue to do. You've got a book that's coming out, another book that's coming out,
I'm currently writing my memoir.
Memoir, yes.
And my literary agent wants me only to focus on the 80s and 90s.
Okay.
She said, Marie, you've had so many lives. Let's just raise this one down to 2 decades.
Okay. Retro. Let's do a little retro. So I encourage you, if you have a book signing here in Chicago.
Oh, of course.
Yes. So
you're my go-to.
Okay. Yeah. I'd love to help out with that. And
thank you.
And let people know because what a wonderful life you've ended up creating for not just for yourself, but for so many people. And I really thank you because, again, you know, Chicago has so much potential, I think, with regards to fashion. And yet at the same time, we're still in some areas at our infancy. There's so much we could do here, right? So, and thank you for the story because I think it's important for people to know that you were working at that level. And at that level, models are not just going to say yes to everything, especially things that are detrimental to them. Right? Yes.
Absolutely.
That's important. That's so important, especially for a lot of the people that are watching that want to get into this. I feel it's a wonderful industry, but it's a tough industry. And again, you've got to be disciplined and you've got to understand what your boundaries are and what your value is. You know, understanding your value is critical for this industry and I think for everything else we do. So,
amen to that.
Amen. So would you like to send some last minute words to our audience? Something you'd like to share at the end or leave some thoughts? I'm excited about the memoir. I have to tell you, I can't wait for that.
Thank you. I've had 100 titles. And my literary agent just keeps saying, Marie, the publisher's going to do that. Lighten up. Darn. I'm so used to controlling my books, but in this situation, I can't. But anyway, advice to people or last thought would be to thine own self, be true. Just like Shakespeare says. It's, again, another simple concept, but it's so hard. To thine own self, be true.
I love that. Thank you. Thank you.
And God bless.
And God bless. And namaste.
Yes. Thank you.
Thanks for watching Chic Innovator. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It's free.